Role of group identity. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at one lesson, approximately 4 to 5 days in length, where you're going to create a visual presentation on group identity. So what do you mean by that, Mr. Doyle? Well, by the end of this lesson, you will be able to, 1, identify the basic political and religious differences between two distinct groups, and 2, identify how two or more groups identify themselves and others. So what do you mean by the groups, Mr. Doyle? Well, first of all, we're going to need to select a conflict. And so how do we select a conflict? Unfortunately, in the world today, there are lots of conflicts to choose from. You have the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, you have Darfur, Somalia, the Indian-Pakistani conflict, you have Kurdish independence, which involves the Kurds, but also several countries, Iran, Iraq, and Turkey. And you have the Sunni-Shia conflict. Now, when I'm speaking of the Sunni-Shia conflict, I'm thinking specifically about Iraq. But there are other areas of the world that, unfortunately, you see a conflict between these two religious sects. So you can decide how you want to approach that particular one. Again, if your group comes up with another conflict that they are really vested in and they want to talk about, past or present, that's absolutely fine. If you want to talk about something within the U.S. history, absolutely fine. Bottom line is what we're trying to get you to do is get a look at group identity and the dynamics involved in that. So, what are you going to do with this conflict? Well, what parties are involved in this conflict? Where are they located? So you're going to need to tell me, for example, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, where are they located? What is the conflict about? Is it about land? Is it about economics? Is it a religious difference? It could be any combination of these or something I haven't even mentioned. Now 3, if it plays a role, what are the basic religious tenets of each group? If they're the same, go ahead and talk about them. But for example, if you're talking about the Sunni-Shia split, while they both fall under the umbrella of Islam, two very different interpretations of Muhammad's message. 4, how do they see each other? Now, if you take a look at the Pakistani-Indian conflict, they see each other quite differently than perhaps maybe the Sunni-Shia see one another. So each conflict is going to have its own little twist to how each group perceives one another. And finally, number 5, the big question, how do you see a plausible solution to this conflict? Now, I'm not expecting you to necessarily solve this global conflict because some of the greatest minds in diplomacy are incapable of solving this. But do you see a plausible solution to this conflict? And it's okay if you stumble and you really struggle with this. We've been struggling for generations with some of these conflicts. So when you're taking a look at each group, you can take this from the Moodle site if you want to, or you can create your own. But this is sort of, let me just walk you through it. So the group, this could be one group, let's just say Sunni. So how do the Sunnis see themselves? We. How do they see the Shia? They. This is the group, the Shia. How does the Shia see themselves? And how do they see the Sunni? So, you must produce a narrated presentation complete with visuals. You must also answer the questions that we talked about before. What parties are involved in this conflict? Where are they located? What is the conflict about? Land, economics, religious, etc. What are the basic religious tenets of each group? And how do they see each other? And finally, do you see a plausible solution to this conflict? StandNow.org is a helpful website that can maybe give some clarity to this. Feel free to explore. You're going to need a bibliography. You're going to have to vet your resources, your sources, because each site is different, and some sites are a bit more reliable than others. Look for the twist on their interpretation of certain events, and you'll be able to see, is this an impartial site, or is this a site with an agenda? And that's not necessarily a negative when you want to talk about group identity. So if you're looking at a site that's very much in favor of one group, you might see how they see the other group. So it's not necessarily, when you're taking a look at perspective, a bad thing to see how they look at it, how they look at a certain situation. So if you have any questions, drop me an email or speak to me in class. Thank you.